I'm going to teach you an advanced technique called vector masks that can only be done in expert mode. But in order to use vector masks, there are a few things that you haven't learned so far that you need to know about. So I'm going to open a blank file, and I'll do that up here under the File, New, Blank File. And whenever you open a blank file, it wants to know some information about it, like what title is it going to be. I'm not going to title it because I'm not going to save it. And the size, the width, the resolution. I usually use a letter size document, which will automatically come up if I choose US paper under preset. And letter size is the default. You'll see here there's other US paper sizes, legal and tabloid. And let's say okay to that. Okay, so I have something to work with here. Let's zoom in on it a little bit. There we go. Okay, before you can start using vector masks, you need to know how to use the brush tool, excuse me, the paint bucket, and the gradient. Let's start with the brush tool. I'm going to click on the brush tool. Here is once I click on the brush tool and look at the options down below, you'll see there are actually 3 brushes. The regular brush tool, the impressionist brush, and the color replacement brush. We're just interested in the brush. Bringing your cursor over to your document, your cursor will probably look like that, which is a very narrow brush. Let's erase that. In order to make your brush size bigger, you can come down here and move. And now you'll see my cursor? Now it's shaped like a circle. That's the thickness of the line I'm going to draw. I'm erasing these, undoing these with Control Z, by the way. I can make the brush bigger, and I can make it bigger. Control Z twice will get rid of all that. Okay, that being said, you will often want to make your brush bigger and smaller, and having to stop, come down here, changing the size of your brush, it kind of disrupts your workflow a little bit. So I suggest trying the hotkeys. Over to the right of the P on your keyboard, you'll find the bracket keys. I'm going to be pressing the left bracket key and watch what happens to my brush. It gets smaller. Right bracket key and it gets bigger. Okay. So there's a brush. Something that you're going to want often to do with the brush is to make the edge feathered. Come down here to brush settings, and that has to do with the hardness of the brush. Right now it is 100% hard. Let's go all the way to the left and see what that does. There is 100% soft. So that's what it does to the edge of your brush. And then you have everything in between. So let's get rid of these. Control Z. That's how the brush tool works. Right now I am painting in black, by the way. I think I'll make this a little harder. Okay. And a little smaller. I'm painting in black. And the reason I can tell I'm painting in black because when I look at these 2 swatches down here, check out the top swatch says set foreground color. So foreground, that's anything that is going to go on the background. So like the brush, a wash, a pencil, anything like that is going to be this color. The bottom one, set background color, white, which is what the background color here happens to be. But if I want this to be a different color, watch what happens when I click on this swatch. I get a window here where I can choose any color, any infinite number of colors. If you notice this slider right here, picture this swatch, this long rectangle, turning around and becoming a circle. Then it would be a color wheel that you're familiar with. I can move this anywhere up to any color, and then this is the color that I'm creating, and then switch. Click anywhere in here. Very, very dark. Very, very dark blue. Kind of light blue. That's the pure color. These are all tints of the color. Adding white, adding more white until I get to pure white. And here is adding black, which is called a shade of a color, till I get to pure black. By the way, this left-hand edge right over here is pure white and pure black. So if I choose this blue, say OK, now I'm drawing in blue. For our masks, though, we're only going to be using black and white. So a quick way to get back to black and white, let's look over here in the corner again, is to switch the, is to click on these two little swatches right here. Notice what it says when I cursor over them. It says default foreground and background colors, which is black and white. So if I click on there, I get black and white. I will be using black and white alternately. So look here at this little curved arrow above them. When I click there, I switch. The foreground and the background color switch. So let's just leave it there at the default. So you see how the brush worked. Let's check how the paint bucket works. I'm going to click on the paint bucket. By the way, I forgot to come over here in my layers and add a new layer. I just always like to leave the background as it is, no matter what it is. You know, we talked about whenever we had a picture, we always made a duplicate of the background so that we didn't touch it. I know this background is just white, but still, just leave it. Notice the new layer I made. I made a new layer by clicking this icon up here. And look at that little thumbnail of it. It's checkerboard. Remember what checkerboard means? It means there is nothing on it. This background layer is full. This background layer is completely full. It's completely full of white pixels. This layer, if I turn the background layer off and you don't see it, is empty. It's transparent. It's got no pixels on it. So that's what I'm going to draw on right now. And with my paint bucket, let me come over here, and whatever layer I'm on is the layer that I'm going to affect and the layer that I'm going to put the pixels on. So if I click, I completely fill that layer with black. Let's go to Control Z. If I wanted to completely fill that layer with red, I would click red. Control Z, make this black again. Okay, the paint bucket, and anything you draw with, by the way, is affected by what is selected. So let's go up here and just use the plain old marquee that you already know how to do. This is the one that we used on Kennedy to swap his face back out. So I have a section selected, and let me get the paint brush. It's black, and I can't paint out here. But look, I can paint wherever the document is selected. So I can only paint inside of the selection. Let's clear that. The paint bucket will only paint inside of the selection. Control Z. All of this will come into play. Whoops. Control D, deselect. Now the last thing you need to know about before we can get into vector masks is the gradient, which is right here next to the paint bucket. I'm going to pick a gradient. Look down here. This kind of shows you what a gradient looks like. A gradient is the subtle change from one color to another color. So the two colors that I have chosen for background and for foreground and background will show up here. foreground, and background. A gradient. When I use a gradient, let me get this whole thing on here now. When I use a gradient, I will click with my left mouse button, click, hold it down and drag. Wherever I drag this line, by the way, if I want it to be perfectly straight, I'm going to hold the shift and it's going to be perfectly straight. Okay, so it's straight now, but gotta leave it on. The gradient, what's going to happen is where I first clicked, it's going to be black. Where I pick up, it's going to be white, and in between, it's going to be every shade that it takes to get from black to white. Here, I'm going to lift up my finger. There it is. Pure black at the top, pure white at the bottom. Now that happened because I went from the very, very, very top to the very, very bottom. What if instead I wanted to have black for half of this, and from that point on go to, to white? So I'll start in the center and then go down like this. It's going to be black above it, and then at that point we'll start to go from black to white. See how that works? Kind of cool. Okay, say I want black down to here, and then I want white from this point down. There it goes. So the shorter this line right here, by the way, I can make a real short line. And I go from black to white with a short gradient in between. So, and what we are making are linear gradients. So no matter which way I drag, it's going to be a line down here. Linear, radial. These are the two that we'll just stick with right now. A radial gradient will radiate from the point that I choose out to as far as I go. So let's go like this, and it will always start with the foreground color and make a gradient to go to the background color. Let's go down here. Now if I want a lot of gray and not any white, I can go right off the page. So I've got black in the center and actually shades of gray and no white. So those are the things that you're going to need to know how to use in order to work with vector masks, which I'm going to show you next.